Hello, and welcome to School to Homeschool. My name is Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I have kids in their 20s all the way down to elementary age and everything in between. Are you thinking about pulling your kids from the public school system like I did, but you are scared to death and don't know what to do next? My friends, I felt the exact same way. And you have come to the right place. I want to help your family leave the system so that you can take the hearts and minds of your children back. Welcome back, my friends. I'm very excited for today's guest. So let me tell you about our guest today. His name is Dan Henry. Dan is the founder of GetClientscom and the author of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling book, Digital Millionaire Secrets. Dan helps entrepreneurs sell their advice or services online for a high-ticket price. He's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, Business Insider, and more. Dan knows the struggle. He once had to sell water bottles on the side of the road just to survive. But he did not give up and eventually built an 8-figure business. And since then, his company has helped thousands of entrepreneurs turn their dreams into reality. Now, I know what you're thinking, mamas. What on earth are we having an entrepreneurial marketing expert on a homeschooling podcast? And the answer is very, very simple. Many of you have reached out and expressed your concern, especially with your teenagers that you've pulled. What do I do? Like, what if I'm homeschooling, what if they never get into college? Or what if they never get a job? Or what if they fail and I fail them? Well, my friends, the reason I wanted Dan to come on is because Dan was homeschooled. And here he is helping tons and tons of business owners realize their dreams. And he himself is a phenomenal success. And so I won't talk about you in third person anymore, Dan, but I wanted Dan to share his story with you and give you some confidence in the choice that you've made to homeschool your kids. And I promise it's well worth your time to have a listen to Dan's story. So Dan, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Super happy to be here.
So Dan, tell your story a little bit, because you were homeschooled. Were you always homeschooled, or were you pulled after going to public school for a little bit?
No, so I actually experienced private school, public school, and homeschooling. I started out my parents sent me to like a Christian academy, which I didn't like very much. I didn't like it. And I thought that public school would be better. Where I went, I found to be a little fanatical in the religion department, and I just, I didn't like it. And so in 7th grade, I went to my first year of public school, and I was absolutely mortified. I'm just going to say it because there's no other way to say it. The kids were just dumb. The teachers were dumb. Everyone was just dumb. They just were really unintelligent people. I didn't quite like the people in private school, but they were at least somewhat intelligent. And everything was about fashion and trends and clicks in public school. And I just found it to be extremely pointless. And so I went back to private school for a year after that. And then when 9th grade was coming around, I begged my parents, please let me homeschool. Please let me homeschool. And my parents did not want to let me do it. And it was the first big sale of my life. And I finally convinced them to not only homeschool, but it was a program called American School out of Lansing, Illinois. And they did not homeschool me. I homeschooled me. They would send the textbooks. I would study the books. They would send the test. I'd take the test, and they would grade it. And the way the program worked was you had 4 years to complete everything. And at the end of you didn't have to do it at a certain time. There was no schedule. They sent you the books, and you would just complete it when you could complete it. And so I did the program, and the first 3 years I did nothing. I did not do any of the schoolwork. And instead, I was reading books on business. I was studying like online marketing and how YouTube channels were built and how marketing worked and how to sell things on the internet, and as well as how to start a business. I was just fascinated by entrepreneurship. So the third year comes around, or the fourth year comes around. My father's like, "Hey, how's school going?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." So
I've done it.
yeah. So in 1 year, I just read all the books and did all the tests, and I ended up with like a 4 point something GPA, and did it all in a year and got it all done. And then I went to college, which was even worse because you have all these people there in college who were emotionally and mentally inept. They just were. Like, it was like they were there to do something that they weren't. And I went to school for audio engineering. And when I went there, they gave us a list of textbooks. Don't ask me why I wanted. My father was a musician, and I just wanted to learn recording arts. And I look at the textbook list, and almost every single one I had already read 2-3 years ago, because I was also fascinated by recording engineering. So when I went to pay for the books, they reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, you have to have your textbooks. You can't just buy a couple. Like, you have to have them all. Like, it's a requirement." And I said, no, I already have them. And they're like, no, we don't show that you bought them. I'm like, no, I bought these books.
I have them. Yeah.
Years ago. I've read them, like many of them twice, like, Mixing Engineer's Guide, Sound Reinforcement, Yamaha Sound Reinforcement Manual, all this stuff. Already read them. So I was bored in college, and I basically didn't listen to anything. I already knew all the answers. It was all basic stuff. None of it was stuff you would learn in the field. It was just basics. And I tested, got like a perfect score on almost everything. Wow. And right as I was about to graduate, I had enough credits to graduate. You have a certain amount of credits, graduate. All of a sudden, and it wasn't a public college, it was a private college, International Academy of Design and Technology in Tampa, Florida. They changed the amount of credits that you needed to graduate. And so I would have had to stay there an extra semester that I shouldn't have had to stay. So I go to the dean's office, and keep in mind, the dean was this woman who, and again, the dean of recording arts. I went onto her MySpace at that time and listened to some music that she had produced, and it was garbage. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I could have done a better mix with headphones on and a laptop. It was terrible. And I'm like, so I go in here and I say, "Hey, listen, I already did my credits. When I signed up several years ago, this was what meant a bachelor's degree. I have these credits. I want my bachelor's degree." And she was, "Nope, not going to happen." And literally my whole life, I wanted a bachelor's degree in recording arts and recording engineering. And I just took a moment in her office and thought about the last, 4 years of my life. I looked her dead in the eye and I flipped her off and I walked out. I said, "Keep your degree." And I left. And to this day, I do not have a bachelor's degree that I already earned. That was it for me. Probably shouldn't have flipped her off, but it was brewing. It was brewing. And so I go through life, and it was a struggle, but eventually I learned to start my own businesses. Some of them were successful, and they were small businesses. Like, I had an Italian ice cart that I went to festivals and carnivals with. And then eventually I graduated. I owned 2 restaurants. And then after the restaurants, I started teaching business owners online how to advertise and get clients, because that's how I had to learn online marketing to grow my restaurants. Mm-hmm. And that just went wild. And we ended up doing 2.9 million our first year. Wow. And look, it was hard. Like you mentioned, there was a point there where I made a bunch of money from selling the restaurants, put it into an investment, and lost it all. and I had to start from scratch. And that was when I was trying to sell water bottles on the side of the road because I couldn't pay the electric. Started an online business, 2.9 million the first year. And since then, we've even done $1 million days because I learned how to speak from stage.
Wow.
And you can make a lot of money doing that. And it's just been a wild ride. And I look back on the whole journey and I can tell you two things. Number one, you absolutely don't need college unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I don't trust doctors in America anyway, so I wouldn't encourage anybody to contribute to that mess. And also, public school is probably the worst place you could send your children. I truly and utterly believe that the phrase "stay in school, kids," school is cool, that is all propaganda, very much so like the propaganda North Korea puts out to its citizens to convince them that the way they live is normal and that that's just how life is, when in reality it's not. It's the same thing here in America. We're just very good at selling it. School is not cool. It's certainly not cool anymore. And I would never recommend, the last place on earth, especially now. Even then I wouldn't. Now is 100 times worse. I would never send my kid. The last place on earth I would send my kid is school.
So let's talk about that, because really, what would you say during that 4 years that you were supposed to be doing a curriculum and you didn't? What would you say was the most valuable education that you got during those 4 years?
I found something I was interested in, and I had the drive to go out and seek the knowledge myself. And that's what it was.
Do you think that discovering that passion and that intrinsic motivation, did your parents ever struggle like fighting you on studying business books?
They didn't even know. They had no idea.
Wow.
They didn't even ask. Yeah.
and I think, because I think it's fascinating. And the listeners of my podcast know this. I am a big proponent of the child-led learning movement, or the unschooling movement, and which is essentially like, what is the child's passion, and let's provide the resources so that they can focus on that thing, whatever it might be. Even YouTube, which I've had a really hard time the last several months when my 16-year-old's like, Mom, I want to study business in YouTube. And by the way, I've been reading all these books, right? Exactly what you've been doing. And I'm like, you need to do science. No, wait, no, he doesn't actually need to. Doesn't need to do science.
But think about this. Imagine if 10 years ago, 20 years ago, he said, I want to study broadcasting. What would you say?
Well, I probably would be like, well, maybe, I don't know, because I was still very bought into, kids have to go to school, versus
right,
now
but I'm saying, from school or not school, if he said, I'm interested in, television broadcasting, does that sound like a more, I guess, noble career than, as you said, YouTube?
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
But
yeah,
YouTube
absolutely
is that today.
Right. And that's that's the point that I had to come to as a mom, to let go of the control and go, okay, you want to spend 8 hours a day studying how analytics for YouTube work, and how the story arc works, and what's working and what's not.
Make them a lot more than TV broadcasting, I'll tell you that.
Right. So, but I think it's interesting, because it sounds like those 3 years of studying all of the business books and entrepreneurial books and all of those things has now informed what you do today.
Oh, yeah.
Is that fair?
Sure. Absolutely.
So, and you've worked with, and I recently just watched one of your YouTube videos. Actually, it was yesterday, because my sons were like, Mom, Dan Henry just did a YouTube video. You got to watch it. And you talk about entrepreneurs that you've worked with, and you were talking about the public education system. Would you share a little bit about what you shared about the entrepreneurs that you work with and how they deal with education for their own kids?
Well, most entrepreneurs that I even just know, very large portion of them are anti-school, and they're very pro-homeschool. Because when you learn to be an entrepreneur, especially if you're any sort of marketer, right? Any sort of marketer, you you understand the veil gets removed from your eyes, and you understand how advertising, how marketing, how social programming works. You have to understand it to be any good at it. And when you understand that, you start to understand agendas. You start to understand why school, I mean, just to give you an example, school has never been for the benefit of the child since its very inception. Before public school was even a thing, children were educated either in the home or by the local community. And you had amazing people come out of that. Multiple presidents, Mary Shelley, okay, Beethoven. You had these incredible, and these people were like 12 when they just did amazing things. And a lot of it, I think, had to do with the fact that they were interested in something and they educated themselves, or they got educated in that thing. And they were allowed the freedom to do that instead of learning something they'll never, ever, ever use. And so the thing is prior to that, children, I believe, were educated much better. And then Rockefeller came along, John D. Rockefeller, and he created the General Board of Education, which then led to mandated public school. And so the thing that people forget is at that time, there was a shortage of workers. It was the Industrial Revolution, and there was a shortage of factory workers. There was all kinds of stuff, right? All kinds of stuff going on. And John D. Rockefeller said, and I quote, "I am not in the business of making a nation of thinkers. I'm in the business of making a nation of workers." Do you know why they put school bells in school? Do you know why that even happened? It's a very dark, dark reason. It's because at that time, they needed more factory workers. Well, they wanted to condition children. They wanted to condition children to come when the bell rings, so that they were conditioned to do so when they worked in a factory. It's not to help them become successful. It's to condition them. It's to program them. School has never been about making your child successful. It's about teaching your child to make other people successful. That is what school has always been about. The only thing that has changed is the awareness around that dark intention. Mm-hmm. The United States especially has had very good marketing, very good propaganda around school. I believe school has never been cool, ever. It's horrible now, but it's never been cool.
Yeah. Well, I think as you brought up the bell system, one thing that I've thought so many times about is that prevents us, like when we are conditioned to follow a bell, it prevents us to really get into a state of flow and dive deep into a subject, especially if we're interested. If we're not interested, it doesn't matter. But when we're interested in a subject, or I remember even when I was in school and I really loved a subject, I loved art, I loved debate. And as soon as the bell rang, I could no longer work on that thing. It was over. I had to go to the next class. And so it prevented me from ever being able to really deep dive unless I was at home on my own. But then when I was at home, I was expected to do my homework, and it prevented me from being able to really explore what I loved. And I look at that with kids, because I look at your education, right? And you had all these hours to really deep dive into the things that you loved, into business, without the constraints of a bell telling you, you have to start, you have to stop, you can't go anymore. And now you're going to do something that you hate. You're going to have to learn the slope intercept formula.
How can a child or anyone be successful in that type of environment?
Right. It's true. And yet we're still conditioned to believe that the only way to be successful is if we go through this and then go to a college that we're going to pay a bunch of money to go to classes that we don't need or want, and get a degree that we may or may not use.
For everything. Okay. Again, I'm a marketer. I know these things. Every diet out there is BS. You eat less calories than you use, you lose weight. The end. Go to the gym, stop eating 300 grams of carbs every day. That you lose weight, period. That's it. It's easy. It's simple. People just don't want to do it. So they buy things like the Atkins diet. Why? Because marketers know that if they frame it, oh, how would you like to learn how to lose weight and eat all your favorite foods? Maybe if you want to eat all your favorite foods, you don't deserve to lose weight. I mean, if I want to eat chocolate cake all day, I probably deserve to be fat. Okay? But they will never say that because that's truth. Right. They create things like the South Beach diet and the Atkins diet, and to sell you something that you ain't never going to. Look at Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness doesn't allow you to grunt when working out, so you're basically not working out. They give you free pizza on Fridays. They have the lowest, you know what I'm saying? Like that is a sales tool. It's not meant to make you healthy. It's meant to make money. You know what the business model of a gym is?
No, I actually don't.
It's people not going to the gym. Because when you pay, if every single person that paid for a gym membership went to the gym would be overcrowded. They wouldn't be able to make any money. So Planet Fitness realized this. So what they did was they created a model where they attracted people who don't actually want to work out. There's no heavy weights in the gym. You can't grunt. You're publicly humiliated if you actually work out. They have this bell you ring to publicly humiliate. They give you free pizza on Fridays. Planet Fitness is meant to make people feel like they're working out just because they have a gym membership. And so they get a very low attendance, which means they can make more money. See, as a marketer, I know these things. So when I look at the school system, when I look at all these various things, everything is conditioning. Some people call it the matrix, right? And it's absolutely true. Everything is conditioning. And when you send your kids to school, I mean, think about who's teaching your kids. You have some wacky, emotionally disturbed 22-year-old girl with blue hair who identifies as a tree or whatever, brainwashing your child for 8 hours a day. And you're concerned if you're going to do a bad job educating your child. It's wild. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I hear so many moms say, I don't have a degree in teaching. I don't have this. I'm like, and I've said, I'm like, did you potty train your child? You were the first person. God gave you that child because he knew you were capable of raising this child and teaching them. And you taught them how to use the toilet. You can teach them other things too. You can. Yeah.
Can I make a couple of points on for those mothers out there who feel unqualified? Let me tell you this. Again, prior to public school, it was just a natural thing for every parent to educate their kid. That's just how it was. And you didn't see them running around saying, oh, I'm not qualified. Okay. The truth is you are qualified. I mean, there was a recent YouTube video I saw where it was like 5 or 6 people, and they were from various jobs, various places in life. And they asked them if they thought where they would rank in that group in terms of IQ, how smart they were. And one of the people there was this, probably some non-binary, whatever. She had the friggin' haircut, the whole thing. Young 22, 23-year-old woman who worked in biotech, literally responsible for making the drugs, the scientific advances, right? And she's like, well, I'm clearly the smartest because I'm in biotech and everybody else is like a construction worker or something. They gave them all IQ tests. Guess where she ranked?
She's probably dead last.
Dead
last. If I was guessing. Yeah.
Dead last. The people who are teaching your children are stupid. The people that are making your drugs are stupid. The people that are managing your medical care are stupid. The people that make your laws are stupid. That's just the way it is. And way, way above those people is these ultra rich people who aren't stupid, who know that if they put stupid people in these positions of power, they can control everyone.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And if you're watching this podcast right now, I can tell you this, you're probably not stupid. You're probably far more qualified than some 22-year-old wacko. By the way, have you talked to a 22-year-old recently?
I have a 22-year-old.
But, well, probably, one that you didn't raise.
Yes, and it's been interesting because
It's not
some of
interesting. It's wild. It is.
yeah,
It's
the
wild.
ideologies that are out there, I'm like, wait, what?
And
Like,
you're worried that you're going to
what?
do a bad job. That's
Yeah.
it's madness. I mean, look, we homeschool my son, okay,
Mhm.
and we travel all around the world. We're in Florida one day, we're in Costa Rica the next day, we're going to go to stay in Dubai for a month. We're in Costa Rica right now. We buy the books. By the way, he's 5 and he's about to crack second grade.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because here's the thing: there were children who were like 7, 8 years old writing political essays. There were 17-year-olds that almost took over the world. Why?
Yeah.
This was back hundreds of years ago. Why?
Mhm.
Because there was no one there to tell them they couldn't.
Yeah.
You would be surprised what a child can do when there's no one there to say, "Hey, you're only 5. Hey, you shouldn't be able to do this yet. Let's keep you here." Children are far smarter if they don't have a ceiling imposed upon them than you think. And so when I teach my son or my wife teaches my son, I don't care how old he is. If he can handle it, he can handle it. And the kid is just because I don't impose those limits that the public school system is going to pose on. And on top of that, if he has a bad day, I don't tell him he can chop his thing off. Okay. So that's also important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting. I have a friend who's a cardiac surgeon, and I know their family very, very well. We go to church with them, and their son is brilliant. He's in 7th grade. I mean, this brilliant, brilliant mind. And I've talked to them about homeschooling, and he said, well, right now in the public school, they're going to let him do 7th and 8th grade math all next year so he can and algebra, and he'll be able to do all 3 next year. And I'm sitting there because my son, who's a year younger, he's 11, and he's in algebra 2 because he zipped through it. And he's like, and I'm not one, like, once they hit algebra, I'm like, if you want to keep doing it, you can. If not, you're not. It's more important that you understand how finances work and the world works in economics than it is that you know the slope intercept formula, to me. And so I thought it was really interesting because I'm like, okay, so the school is going to allow your child to take a higher level math class, even though the kid's mind is brilliant. If he was given time on his own, he'd probably be done with trig by now. But the school is dictating how far he can go versus my child who said, Mom, I'm zipping through algebra. Can I go ahead and do algebra 2? Because I want to, just because I want to. And I'm like, you betcha. And yet as you mentioned with your son, there's not those constraints. There's not that ceiling of you will do what you're told, when you're told, how you're told. There's no ceiling. It's like the fleas that are in a jar. And when you put a flea in a jar and you put a lid on the jar, the flea will never jump higher than the lid of the jar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we do that to our children. And I feel like the school system does that to our kids, that they put the lid on the jar and they will never jump higher than that because they're conditioned to
By
go
design.
only as high.
By design. Because if everybody was like that, I mean, if you really think about it, if everybody was independent and everybody was an entrepreneur and everybody was, an artist, and the whole economy would fall apart. And so they need people to stay within the balance. They can't have people doing that. They can't have kids doing that. Again, school by design is not meant to make your child successful. It's meant to teach them how to make someone else successful by being a worker. And again, what happens in corporate, right? You're really good at your job. You can do your job. You can do somebody else's job better, but you can't move up because you haven't been here that long, or Sally had the job promised to him or whatever, or politics, or it's who you know. It's the same thing. Okay. But see, when you're an entrepreneur, there's nobody to tell you that you can't do it better, because that's literally the very nature of being an entrepreneur. Is you think you can do it better. You think you can solve a problem that other people are unwilling to solve, or you think you can solve it better. So you go out, you do it, you risk your time, your effort, and in some cases your money, and you get rewarded exponentially higher than everybody else for it. And, you know, that I think is just something that is not going to be, you have to unlearn things from school in order to adopt that mindset.
So here's a question for you. Of the entrepreneurs that you know and that you work with, which is a lot, you work with that's all you work with is entrepreneurs. How many of them did really, really well in school or even stayed in school? Do you know the statistics?
A lot of them were homeschooled. A lot of them were dropouts. I'll be honest with you. The age of entrepreneurship right now, with online entrepreneurship, you really don't have to be that smart to make money on the internet. I'm just gonna say it. I know some pretty dumb people that make a lot of money because they just know how to do one thing really good. When I owned restaurants, when I owned actual brick and mortar businesses, it was way more difficult. I remember one time I had a restaurant, and we had a bar in the restaurant, which I'll never do again because I don't believe in drinking anymore. This was like 15 years ago. But cops came in, the local police came in and sat down and wanted a drink for free. And I said, hey, I appreciate your service, but I don't give drinks for free. I'm here to make money. I don't do that, and they got so angry at me for that they started harassing me and coming by and trying to shut me down and cite me for loud music when I was playing it as low as it could possibly go. I mean, there was nights that we just had pool league. There was the music was super low, and they just messed with me, right? I had days where a bartender was supposed to come in and open the establishment by 11 a.m. And, they got into a fight with their boyfriend, so they couldn't do it. And, next thing you know, it's 1 o'clock and I'm like, why isn't it open? This is all very painful BS to deal with. And when you deal with that in the brick and mortar world, the real business world, your tolerance of pain gets pretty friggin' high. So when I go into the online world, you don't have to deal with anywhere near as much BS. So the amount of problems were here. My tolerance for problems were here. My pain tolerance is up here. So when I didn't get that first sale, when I didn't make $1 million in the first 5 minutes or whatever, I was like, okay, I just keep trying. It's literally no problem. Most people, when they start any sort of online venture, if they don't make money right away, if it doesn't happen for them right away, they give up. And I believe a lot of this stems from school. There's things that are taught to you in school that programs you to give up. Things like, oh, play it safe. That's a pipe dream. Get a real job. We experience the slightest bit of friction, the slightest bit of adversity, and immediately our mind program goes, oh, I should just get a real job. And we quit, And so I don't know the original point I was trying to make, but
still good.
Yeah, but the point is that I don't think you need to be extra smart to succeed in online. We're living life on easy mode right now when it comes to making money, and there's been no easier point in human history, to make money. And it kind of makes me sound like I'm actually not that talented, but whatever. My family's fed and we have a great life, and I'll take it.
So I've got a question, because the other thing that I hear from parents all the time, and I don't get it as much, the question of aren't you worried about your kids being socialized? Which always makes me laugh, because I'm like, well, the words socialized sounds like political term.
Are you asking if they're worried that their kids, if they're homeschooled, won't learn proper social skills?
Right, which is what we hear all the time, is if a child is homeschooled, they will not learn proper social skills.
Good.
So let's expound on that. Why
Who
do you
wants
feel like
to
that's
socialize with people today? Have you seen the people out there? I don't want my child learning to socialize with people like that. I want my child to socialize with a different class of people. And I don't mean rich. I mean people who care about their personal development, people who care. I mean, there is no shortage of organizations and places out there where children can socialize with other children who have specific interests. Okay. I mean, look, I'm sorry, but when I was in school, and my father and my mother said the same thing. Oh, you won't socialize with. I'm not there to socialize. I'm there to win. I'm there to learn what I got to learn and get out and go do it. Okay. Put it this way. Did I struggle to socialize in my early life? Yes, but only with people that, in my opinion, didn't matter. I did not get along with the kids that wore their pants around their ass. I did not get along with the kids that stayed up till 2 a.m. playing video games. You're absolutely right. I had no idea how to socialize with them. But the people that actually cared, the kids that actually cared to learn, the kids that actually cared to make something of themselves, zero problems socializing with them. So yeah, if you're concerned that your kids won't know how to socialize with losers, yeah, it's a concern. But if you're only concerned with if your kids can socialize with winners, probably not that big of a concern.
Yeah. Thank you. So with your son, because you guys travel a lot, what have you been able to introduce to your son with the travel? Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's really remarkable and kind of a really cool thing.
Well, my kid understands differences in cultures. He understands that the United States and Americans aren't the only people in the world. And the way that America conducts itself is not the end all be all. There are far more respectful cultures out there. There are cultures where women do not act like prostitutes and call it normal. Like, these things exist outside of America. And so I believe that the biggest thing is he's been able to see that there are things outside of America, and there are cultures and there are ways of living life outside of America. And with that, he won't, know, or he won't think that American is the way to be. And not that I'm trying to, and it's not even American, it's Western culture. Not that I'm trying to denounce Western culture, but I kind of am, because Western culture has become very toxic. Maybe 50 years ago, it wasn't so much, but today it's very toxic. And most people I know that I would consider, high quality people. And I don't mean like, I'm a good person. I mean like, just, they want to do quality things with their life. They don't want to just sit around all day and waste their lives. They want to contribute to the world. They feel very similar. They feel that life and society has got out of hand here, right? So we live in Costa Rica a large portion of the time, most of the time, and people are kinder here. They're less aggressive. They don't shove their ideologies down your face. Women are more respectful. I shudder to take my son down the street in Florida because it looks like a strip club. I mean, literally, if I was a father in today's age of a daughter, I would probably move to like Saudi Arabia or something and just hide in a hut. I mean, it is so terrible. I mean, literally, I see 12-year-old girls that literally look like they just got off stage at the club. It is mortifying. Yeah. Mortifying. Mm-hmm. And I don't want my son to see that and think that's normal. That's not normal. That is the toxic iteration of Western culture that has just completely got out of hand. You got people, I mean, I remember one day I was walking down the street. They shut down Central Avenue in downtown St. Petersburg for a family fun event. Family. Mm-hmm. There was a booth where a bunch of drag queens were set up. And by the way, when I say drag queens, I'm not talking, this is a drag queen, at least that I've seen, is not a man dressed as a woman. It's man dressed as a female stripper. Mm-hmm. Because most of their private parts were exposed. Whole ass exposed. It was mortifying. And I would have been just as shocked if it was a woman. And I'm walking down the street. My son, 5 years old, can just see that stuff. Then one of the drag queens walks up to my son, reaches out and says, hi. And I looked at him and I say, you need to take that arm, turn around and walk away, or I'm going to take that arm. Do not talk to my son. All right. You imagine that, being 5 years old, looking up and seeing this man with his private parts hanging out basically in saran wrap, fully exposed ass, crazy makeup, hair. I mean, what do you make of that? That is not normal. That is not okay. That's called indecent exposure. Anybody else that did that would get arrested. But if you're gay or you're LGBTFYZ, then it's okay. Then it's brave. That is how toxic Western culture has got. And so by showing him that not everyone is just insane, that there are other cultures out there that are respectful, that like don't do stuff like that. Because I'm sure that happens here in Costa Rica, but not like fractured.
Not like it does here.
Yeah.
Right.
It shows him that there are good, wholesome, ethical, moral people out there. We're going to go to Dubai for a month and he ain't going to see none of that stuff there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So last words for moms who have concerns that they want to take their kids out, or they have taken their kids out and they're feeling like they're not doing great.
They're not doing great, or their kids aren't doing great?
Well, they're not doing great with their kids, because I hear that a lot. I hear moms going, "What? I feel like I'm failing, my child," or I feel like, I'm scared that I'm not doing it right. Okay. What would you say, having been that homeschool kid?
Here's what I will say. I can instantly tell if someone is a hard worker by simply asking them if they're a hard worker. If I ask someone, are you a hard worker? And they say yes, I know they're lazy. Because hard workers always think they're lazy. And lazy people always think they're hard workers. That's what makes a hard worker a hard worker. It's their internal perception that they're just not doing it good enough. That is the very essence of being a hard worker. So if you are worried that you're not doing a good job for your kid, that's why you're doing a good job, because you're worried that you're not. If you were like, oh, I'm good, I'm chill, I'm the best homeschool mother ever, I got this, you probably suck. You probably don't have the drive or ambition to be better. Will you be perfect? No. Will you make a mistake? Yes. But the thing is, you're going to learn, and that attitude that you're not good enough, that attitude that you think you're messing up, is what is going to drive you to correct whatever that is so that you are good. Without that, you have no incentive to improve. You have no incentive to regulate yourself. And so I would say, if you are worried that you're doing a bad job, you are the best possible person to be doing the job. That's what I would say.
I love that. I hope, moms, you heard that. I hope you know that you're doing better than you think you are. And you beat yourselves up all the time. I know I do too. We've talked about that. Like, you're doing so well. And your kids are going to turn out. Look at Dan. He is phenomenal. And he turned out just fine. So with that, moms, I hope you have a great week. Know you're doing better than you think you are. And we will talk next week. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us today about your life experience and your perspectives. It has been so fantastic. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you coming on. I just hope anybody that watches this realizes there is a better way than public school, and it is okay to have all these feelings, and it's normal, and you're going to be great, and your child's going to be great.
I love it. Thank you. God bless, and we'll talk to you guys next week. If you enjoyed this today, please like and subscribe. You could also join our private Facebook group at School to Homeschool, or sign up for our newsletter at www.schooltohomeschool. Have a great day.